welcome to today's episode of Sober on the Mic. Today we have Chris with us from Not Saints, and I'm really, really excited about this. Him and his guys have helped us quite a lot with our sober open mics that we run, so I'm really excited to kind of get this one up and running. But we'll start, as we always do, with a quick fire questions. You happy with that, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. Yes, good to see you.
Worries. Right, let's go. Question number one. How old are you?
I am 45.
See, life begins at 40. I'm hearing a lot, and I'm quite into this.
Yeah, it's definitely things do get better, I'd have to say. Like a fine cheese.
Yeah, I'm 36 and I'm looking forward to my 40s, I must be honest. Where are you from?
Oh god, so I currently live in Brighton, but I've kind of lived all over. But I settled here about 20 years ago, and that's just so I've been here about 20 years now. So yeah, I moved down after a particularly messy alcohol and drug fueled marriage, and then that fell apart and was just like, I need to get away from here, so I ran from Essex to Brighton. So that's my that's how I ended up. I was only supposed to be here for 5 years, and then stayed because it's nice.
It's meant to be a lovely place to live, Brighton.
Yeah, expensive but good. Yeah.
What's your star sign?
Libra. Apparently balanced, maybe. Apparently, no.
Well, I was going to say, this story will tell us how good you are with balance today.
Absolutely, but definitely, man, definite air sign for sure. Yeah.
What daily habit do you do to keep yourself grounded?
Oh, gratitude is everything, basically. Just looking at my life and where I've come from and what I've got, and just even the really simple things, so
it's a good one, isn't it? Gratitude.
You ain't got it, you ain't got anything else, definitely.
No, that's a great one. What is a quote or mantra that you live by?
Oh, so this is one that I came up with in early recovery, and it's kind of stood by me through everything, which is, as long as nobody dies. And it basically just means, like, in recovery, you can do anything you want, you can go anywhere you want, you can be anybody you want, as long as nobody dies. So, like, whenever we get a new opportunity, it's just like, we'll just go for it. As long as nobody dies, it's fine, so.
That's a really, really good one, isn't it? Really, really good one.
Stood by me a long time, that one.
Yeah. Who is your hero?
Oh, it's got to be Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah.
I just think he's just been in 2 world-class bands and just shows no signs of stopping. He's just an incredible musician and a really inspiring human being. So
yeah. That's a really, really lovely one. What is a song that always lifts your mood?
Oh, Rescue Me by Fontella Bass. So it's,
that's a good one.
Classic kind of Decca Records, Motown era kind of, really, it's that dun, 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 right at the very start, and then it just gets everyone up. So it's a fantastic tune. Yeah.
I love a bit of Motown. My mum loves Motown, and when I was younger, all angsty, listening to me heavy metal, was a bit like, oh fuck Motown. And now as an adult, I'm like, oh my god, I love Motown so much.
I play it a lot when we do training, because it's like literally just everyone just gets really into it and chilled and happy, and it's like you can't be grumpy in a training session when there's Motown playing.
No, you can't. Like funk, soul, disco, and Motown is like what I listen to all the time now.
That's it.
Who would play you in the movie of your life?
Oh, see, I asked my girlfriend this one because I was completely stuck, and she went down a massive rabbit hole. But we came out with Travis Fimmel, who played Ragnar in the Vikings series.
Yes. I can see that.
Yeah, she was like, he needs to be a bit rough around the edges, but quite cool with it. And I was like, I don't know. And then we were going through lists and lists, but Travis Fimmel came out, and I was like, I'll take that.
I'll take that one. Yeah. And who would do the soundtrack to the movie of your life?
Oh, it's got to be Josh Homme again. Queens of the Stone Age, definitely. Yeah, it's all things to all people, I think, is the thing. So bits of edginess and bits of rock and bits of kind of just groove and soul in there as well. It's definitely got to be Josh Homme.
That would be good, wouldn't it? Viking to the soundtrack of the Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically my life.
If you could have a dinner party with a famous person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Just out of pure curiosity, I'm going to say Stephen Fry, and you probably had that before, but I think
we haven't actually, which is surprised me.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I just think he's such a fascinating guy, so intelligent, so witty. Obviously, I think he's sober as well now.
Yeah, I think he is
for a long time. So I think he would just be a really interesting person to just have dinner with.
Yeah, that's a really good chat. I am surprised we haven't had Stephen Fry more. Stephen Fry and Darren Brown was what I was expecting a lot of.
Oh, okay, yeah, Darren Brown, I think would wind me up a bit, but I think Stephen, I think Stephen Fry, I don't know, he's just lived such a colourful life, and he's really
Yeah,
down to earth. I think he's a bit of a national treasure. I think that's
he
the
is.
thing,
He
Stephen Fry. I
definitely
mean,
is.
just yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah.
If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Well, see, I was like, I don't know. And then my girlfriend said, well, what about freezing time? And I was like, oh, that would be quite handy.
Yes.
Because I'm so busy all the time.
Yeah.
It's just to be able to stop time, do my inbox, like get through all my emails, and then carry on
Yeah.
with life. And the time hasn't passed. I think would be
Yeah,
amazing.
that's a good one. I always like the
Mm.
idea of having a little clone as well, so she can go and do all my bits and bobs
Oh,
while
that's a
I'll
good
have a little
idea.
lie down.
Yeah, yeah. It's along the same lines of kind of
Yeah.
like just having a bit of
Yeah.
extra time and extra capacity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then some more into kind of why we've got you here today.
Yeah.
What was your drug of choice? And obviously we include alcohol in that.
Yeah, I mean, God, I dived around all manner of things. I mean, it was kind of I'd never one particular drug. I mean, alcohol was the thing that really brought me to my knees in the end, and it was the
Yeah.
one constant all the way through from about the age of 15, 16. It was
Yeah.
the kind of, when I wasn't at college, I was drinking. When I was out with mates all the time. But my first real drug of choice, as I say, my first love in that world was probably amphetamines, like speed. Used to get kind
Yeah.
of real trucker biker speed up in Essex, and it was like
Mm.
the pasty stuff, and it was just you could stay up for days and party on it for
Mm.
days, and it was just mental. And that stayed with me a long time, like
Yeah.
right into my late 20s. But yeah, coke, pills, anything that get me up and kind of
Yeah.
folk like just give me that ready to go
Yeah.
kind of vibe. And always counterbalance with alcohol to bring me down and
Yeah.
kind of so yeah. I always smoked a lot of weed, but I didn't like it. It was one of those
Mm.
classic drug users where it's just like just something to change the way I
Yes.
feel. But yeah, I think definitely any uppers really was always the
Yeah.
thing. But in the end, it didn't really matter. I mean, I always hated MDMA, but I do bucket
Do it
loads of it
anyway.
because
Yeah.
yeah. I remember sitting with an old mate of mine, playing Tiger Woods golf on the PlayStation at like 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning, doing lines of MDMA and being like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
What am I doing? Yeah. It's always mental when you have them moments you think, what am I doing?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah. So yeah, pretty much anything. But
Yeah.
I know I was never an intravenous drug user, but I think if I'd have stayed that course, that
Yeah.
probably at some point it would have occurred. But certainly, I've knocked around with enough people that have been into that sort of side of
Yeah.
things that it was probably only a matter of time. But
Yeah.
lucky for me, my window opened and I leapt through it with both
Yeah.
feet. So
And how long have you been sober for?
I have been sober for 9 years now,
Wow, that's a
and
good innings,
so
that.
I will be 23rd of May. It'll be 10 years, so it'll be my decade. So yeah, it's been an interesting run. It's
Yeah.
I thought it's that funny thing, isn't it? You come in and you think that drink and drugs are the problem, and then you find out it's you that's the problem, and
Yeah.
it's completely crazy. And then I think for the best part of my recovery, I sort of thought, okay, this is cool, I can do all this. But what they say about the seventh year is there's a bit of truth in that.
Yeah.
Like it's a really hard. I found the year number 7 was like really hard emotionally, like learning
Oh.
what real emotional
Yeah.
sobriety was, and then from that, like I learned a lot about myself and yeah, basically found out that I was autistic and had ADHD, and I was like,
Right.
oh, okay, that's some new stuff to assimilate into my recovery and
Yeah.
what that looks like. And I know a lot of people try and work out where the addiction is and where the neurodivergence is, and for me, it's all part of one big messy
It's one
soup.
big blob.
It's
Yeah.
one big messy soup that I have to
Yeah.
wade through on a daily basis, and it's
Yeah.
fine. It's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a hell of a 10 years. But I always say like the best things that ever happened to me in my life have happened in these last 10 years.
Yeah.
Everything else before that was just a chaotic railroad of misadventure that led me
Yeah.
to actually growing as a human being and becoming a human being. So
Yeah. So with that in mind, it's quite a
mm,
good time to kind of check right in with the story now. So kind of
mm,
start in wherever you wish. Kind of tell us your story of addiction through to recovery,
sure.
and we'll kind of see what we can pick out of it, if that makes sense. So yeah, wherever you want to
Yeah.
start, where does your journey with all of this stuff start?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose like I hear a lot of people talk about kind of that feeling of ease and comfort and like feeling ill at ease and kind of
Yeah.
from childhood and like it sort of rings with me a little bit that one, but more in the way that I heard someone share ages ago that they basically just didn't want what was on offer.
Yeah.
Like they looked at life and they looked at what was being offered to them and they just went, I don't really want that.
Yeah.
Like But as a kid, you've got no way of kind of exploring
Hmm.
that or explaining that, or even like figuring out if there's a way to do life, because you're just told you go to school, you go get a job, da, 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 this is the life you have. And
You
so,
have kids, you
like,
buy a house, all that sort of.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Societal benchmarks and norms, and how
Yeah.
we're told we're supposed to be successful. And it's like, what does success even mean to people?
Yeah.
It's kind of, the societal norm. So for me, like growing up, I was just like, I just checked out really early. Like I was
Mm.
always in trouble at school, but because I just didn't want to follow rules, I didn't want to
Yes.
follow convention. Someone said to me, do this or do the opposite, because
Hmm.
I don't want what you've got. I don't
Yeah.
want to be part of this caste of society that has everything laid out. So I kind of, yeah, I think from that age, it was kind of that early mindset of like stepping out of society really set me on a
Mm.
trajectory that kind of, that really took me into drinking drugs quite early. So, I started smoking weed at kind of 14, I think, and
Mm.
and drinking even earlier, probably about 11 or 12, like
Yeah.
swiping booze from friends' mums' liquor cabinets and stuff. And like, we'd fill up a plastic bottle with God knows what and go
Yeah.
cycling over the lanes and then drink it all in a field and then try and cycle back on our bikes, mostly falling in ditches and
Yeah.
being messes, little messes. But I think that the obvious kind of things started to show when I was about 15, 16. I'd drink to blackout, whereas all my mates would be
Mm.
partying. I would be gunning it. Like, I think at one
Yeah.
point I was found outside in a garden in like February in a party, and I've been out there for hours, passed out, and like my lips were blue, and they were trying to
Yeah.
bring me round and stuff, and I was like proper verge of hypothermia stuff. And so those cracks really started quite early on, and then carried on, kept going. God, I was, especially when I moved to Colchester, I was like in trouble with the police all the time, and
Mm.
couldn't hold down a job. Like I said earlier, I met someone and we married, and essentially I always joke about how I married my drinking partner.
Yeah.
We used to drink a lot
Extraordinarily
together, and
common.
yeah,
Very,
yeah,
very common.
absolutely. So that lasted about 2 years tops, and then that fell apart, and then and all the time it's going. Actually, while I was married, I wasn't doing so many drugs, but I was definitely drinking more than I should. And then
Yeah.
when that fell apart, I hit a gear really badly, to the point where I was just all over the shop. I was pretty much permanently signed off work,
Mm.
and then I decided to move to Brighton to sort myself out
Yeah.
and get clean and live a better life. And of course, got to Brighton at the point it was kind of still the tail end of the drugs capital kind of vibe, and lots of free parties and house parties and stuff like that. So just kind of out of the frying pan into the fire, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I founded around here until I was about 30, playing in various bands and
Mm.
getting heavily involved in the music scene and promoting nights and stuff. And then all the time just drinking getting worse and drugging getting worse. And then when I was 30, I had one of those epiphany moments again. I was like, I know, I'll go to university and I'll stop using drugs and I'll drink like a gentleman and everything will be
Yeah.
fine. And I'll get my degree if I just drink and I like a normal person. And of course, I got to university, student loan, got double student loan because I was a mature
Yeah.
student. And then all my mates were like at work all the time, and I was like a
Yeah.
student, so I was bumming around like Brighton and Hove, kind of going, well, what do I do? So I just
Mm.
would sit in the pub, or I'd sit at home and
Yeah.
drink on a Tuesday, like all day long. And it was, so
Yeah.
it just really got worse and worse and worse. And then I eventually kind of scraped through my degree with a 2-1 and a massive dispensation from the uni, a massive extension to sort of like help me. And then I really I literally went on the skids for 2 years. I was kind of like, I was working awful temp jobs that I just didn't enjoy. So I was drinking more because it was
Yeah.
miserable. And then, as you started using a lot of drugs again, then I hatched a plan to try and make some money by selling drugs. And then that obviously wound up doing all the drugs. And just,
It's
I think
weird, isn't
by,
it, how we find so many different solutions? Like, I'm going to move,
yeah,
I'm going to get a degree, I'm going to
yeah.
do that. We always find a multitude of solutions rather than addressing the issue,
But
don't
this is
we?
it. This is it.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, you can run and run and run and run and run, but you're still there.
Yes,
Like,
you can't have a holiday from
no,
yourself.
exactly. So, by the time I was kind of, I think it was in, I was going to say October 2017, a friend of mine, he decided he was drinking too much and wanted to kind of explore some recovery, like, and hadn't really kind of thought, and he talked about it and was like, maybe you should give it a try. And I was like, oh, if it'll help you out, I'll go along. And I did my
Yeah.
first detox, and kind of obviously within the first 5 days I was like the new messiah.
Yep.
I knew everything about recovery. I had this sobriety thing licked. Like, I was going to be able to go out and have a couple of pints again like I did when I
Yep.
was 16 or whatever, and have a really good time. And it was like I was treating it like a reset, and obviously
Yeah.
it ain't a reset because it doesn't get better. It never gets better. So so I did that detox and then relapsed after about 11 days. And what then happened was the most prolific, prodigious 7 month bender that, you know, I had literally, by the end of it, I'd decided what tree I was going to hang myself from. It
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
it was getting to that point. And I just, you know, this is where I said earlier about the kind of using, you know, using and just sitting there being like, why am I doing this?
yeah.
Like, what's going on? And just, but honestly believing that the next day was always going to be better. Like tomorrow will be better than today. I'll just drink today and then tomorrow I'll
And then
just stop.
tomorrow I'll sort it.
Like, you
Yeah,
know, and it's like, how are you just going to stop tomorrow? Like, there's no logic
yeah.
to any of it. You know, it's that whole denial thing. And yeah. And in the end, I woke up one morning, I'd been in blackout, and I had this vague notion, you know, that sense of impending doom, they call it, don't they? And I was like, something bad's happened. And I couldn't figure out what it was. So I messaged a friend who I'd thought I'd seen the day before, and he just sent me back three little words. It was like, you need help. And
Right.
and I started messaging back, and I just said, I don't know what I've done. What happened?
That must have been awful.
And he was like, you need help. And just sent the same three words
Mm,
again. So I was like, Christ. So I sat there and I had a good cry, as you do. And then I was
yeah,
like, and I already knew obviously about the drug and alcohol services here. So I took myself off and self-referred in. And they told me I had to wait 2 weeks before they could get me in for a
yeah,
detox. And I had an assessment and stuff, and basically for the next 2 weeks, I was told to keep a drink diary, as we're all told, which is, you
yeah,
know, is good because it gets you thinking logically about, or
yeah,
trying to think logically about what you do. But obviously everybody lies.
yep.
It's just the thing. Yeah, I went in for detox, but I later found out that the friend I'd seen, I'd owed him 50 quid, and I'd gone to pay him back, and I'd given him 45, and he'd seen me pocket a fiver and challenged me on it. And I was like, oh, I need it to get to work on Monday, blah, 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 blah. And obviously, I knew it was for drink. He knew it was for drink. He was going to see his mum and take his mum out for, I think it was Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And he was like, I need the 50 quid to take my mum out. Like, you need to give me that fiver. And I was like, no, I need it. I need it. And
Mm,
basically, a fight ensued,
right.
with punches being thrown and all sorts, and him trying to basically restrain me and stuff. And it was just horrific. And I think in that moment I was just like, God, I've stooped to the lowest of the low. You
Yeah.
know, I'm having a fight with my last remaining friend over a fiver.
Yeah. What
Like,
am I
what has
doing?
happened? What has
Yeah.
happened to me? You know, and so when the opportunity came up to detox, like I just literally grabbed it with both hands
Yeah.
that time. I met some people in the local creative recovery cafe, and they sort of welcomed me in, and they were like, you know, really giving me good, strong advice. And I was hanging out in there when I could, and you know, and so yeah, when I did my detox, oh, and I started going to fellowship as well, 12
Yeah.
step fellowship. So, you know, when it came to kind of, when I finally dried out and I finally kind of got to that point, it was like, okay, I've arrived in the new place. You
Yeah.
know, I had friends in recovery already who were through the cafe, and I had friends in 12 step fellowship, and they all just wanted to see me do well. So, you know,
Yeah.
got myself a sponsor, and on I went.
Yeah.
So,
That there was a couple of things for me that I kind of wanted to. So firstly, what impact did being like in the music industry have on
mm,
the continuation? Because for me, they're so hand in hand. And
yeah.
I did a podcast right at the beginning with a comedian who
Mm,
said like drugs and alcohol was rife in the
mm,
comedy world. And like he said that's for so long kind of kept it
mm.
going because it was totally normalized. Well, is it similar in music?
Firstly, yeah, comedians. I know a lot of comedians who are sober now, and I think the thing about being a comedian, and they get a lot of sympathy from me for this one because it's such a lonely existence.
Yes.
Like, unless you're on a gig, you're on your own. Like,
Yeah.
you're on your own in the car, going from city to city, doing the show, dressing room by
Yeah.
yourself, and it's just that must be so
Intense.
like just intense and so isolating, and kind of
Yeah.
like that's a great place to be your addiction to kind of go
Yeah.
you know. But I think in the music industry as well, it's like, especially when you're in your like 20s to 30s and even early 30s, like everyone's up for it. Like,
Yeah.
depending on what circle. So if you're in a band that everyone likes to drink and a drug, like, and all the other bands around you that you're playing and gigging with, they all like a drink and drug. So I remember years back, we went to Brighton Beach, and like there were like 4 or 5 bands, and we all hung out and we all played gigs together. And so we went to Brighton Beach, and it was like a massive circle of people, all dressed in black, all off their heads in the middle of Brighton
Yeah.
Beach. band members, respective girlfriends, friends, partners. Like, it was massive, and it was just. But it was it's such a great place to hide an addiction until it really becomes apparent. So like the band I joined when I moved to Brighton, I was moved down in 2005, joined a band straight away. Me and the guitarist would use pretty much constantly together. Like the rest of the band were a bit like, oh, those two fucking got, problems, blah blah blah. But we would have periods of sobriety, or not sobriety, but we would have periods where we weren't using so heavily on the drugs, and we just drink more or whatever, and like and then the guitarist moved away, and the band carried on, and it was kind of almost like, you just because everybody else is doing it, you can
normalized.
Like it's so normalized there. I mean, like the band used to we just used to smoke tons of weed when we were at band practice, or like I'd have a couple of cheeky lines of whiz, and then I'd use the weed to bring me down, and everyone else would be drinking beers, and so we'd all, so everyone's kind of at it all the time, and it was just But I think there are bands now that kind of don't. I think there are bands that are, I think the younger generation are definitely, there's more of a divide, I think, between kind of musicians who do that lifestyle and musicians who don't. I think it's become I think it's become less accepted. It's certainly, but it still goes on behind closed doors a lot more. So, I think it's, but it was just a really easy place to hide an addiction. I think it still is, really. Although there's a lot more help available than there was when I was coming up through the ranks, but certainly, it's just the lifestyle, When you're working, when you're out off touring and stuff like that, or you're gigging every night, it's kind of, you're not getting to bed till 3-4 in the morning, line of Chang to bring you up, like a few drinks to bring you down, a few spliffs to bring you down. It's just that kind of, it can become a perpetuating cycle.
Yeah,
I know
proper
when we were on tour,
cyclic.
it was hard.
And in regards to the incident with your mate and stuff, that kind of, you need help text, like I'm such a big believer of like, we wait for rock bottom instead of kind of getting ahead of it. Like with addicts, we kind of, it hits it. So how did that kind of reflection and mirror shown back at you of kind of, fucking hell, all of that over a fiver? What was that experience like for you? What happened right in your head for around that?
So I don't know really, because for me, I mean, I always sort of joke that there were more rock bottoms, more severe ones, like waking up in cells, or like at one point I fell down a metal fire escape, broke 3 ribs, woke up in bed the next day, couldn't move, and basically laid in bed drinking cider until I could get out of bed. Like, and those rock bottoms are like girlfriends basically turning around to me and going like, you're an absolute mess, I can't be with you anymore. And like me being like, oh, it's her problem, not mine. But but when people who say they love you are turning their back on you, it's like, that should be an indication that things have got bad. And as a friend of mine in 12-step fellowship who says it, he basically says like, we've got windows where we're receptive, the addiction's going like this, like waving back and forth, and then on the other side is recovery, and it's almost like you're trying to line everything up perfectly, and it has to be that perfect moment. So for all the police incidents and ambulances and all of that stuff, like that fight over £5, which seems like a ridiculous thing. Yes, it's ridiculous, and yes, it's really sad and tragic, but there were more severe consequences for my drinking and using. But at that moment, at that time, my brain was responsive, and the window was open, recovery was on the other side, and like I say, just climbed through it and was like, what's happening here? And I think that's the thing. It's amazing,
that kind of divine timing thing, isn't it? Yeah.
And this is the thing, and they only come along so very often, and I think people, particularly people who are kind of new to recovery, or they kind of come in, they think that they can have a cheeky relapse perhaps, and then they'll just come back, but you're not, because once you go back out the door, you don't know when the door is going to open again. When you're the door in your mind, the door in the universe is going to open, and you can step back through. And I've had friends who have gone back out and never come back, and I've had friends who've gone out and God rest them, and they've passed over, and that's it. They've made us, even on one hit of something, and they've gone over, and that's it. That's the end of the game. It's crazy. And so I think if you come in, just those lurking notions, you just gotta go, if all my best ideas got me here, then I should stay here.
Stay here. Yeah, that's a good one. So you start going to the fellowship, you've got a sponsor, then what happens? So you've committed to, I'm going to have a go at this, I'm going to try and pull this on the earth. Then what happens?
I mean, it's really quite boring, to be fair. I mean, it's not boring
Good.
because because I have a really interesting and colourful life. But it's, yeah, I basically just came in and the more I stuck around, the more I kind of listened to people, the more I engaged with this newfound life, because it was a new life. It wasn't the life I had before, and it was like the more I engaged with it, the more I suddenly wanted more of it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's typical addict. I'll just have more of everything, please. You
Yeah.
know. But yeah, I mean, a friend of mine said to me, he was just like, look, if you're going to get sober, get busy. You
Yeah.
know,
That's
fill
a
your
really
time,
good
get
one.
busy. You know,
Yeah.
so I started mucking in with a theatre company. I'd do sound and light, because I had basic understanding which I developed, and kind of like, so I could, start building lighting rigs for theatre shows and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then we do some theatre shows through the local creative recovery charity, and then we did a recovery festival down here, and it was kind of all just like that side of things, the recovery side of things. I was just embracing it, and I started
Yeah.
off at, I didn't say this earlier actually, but when I got sober, I lived above a pub.
Right.
So I used to have to go through the pub to get to my room. So I used to do basically local treatment centre. I'd do the outpatient stuff in the morning, then I'd mill
Yeah.
about in town at the recovery cafe during the day, then I'd do a 12-step meeting in the evening, then I'd hang out with fellows until about 11, 12 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
then go home.
Yeah.
So that first 90 days I was doing like 120 meetings, like
Yeah. Yeah.
literally in that time period. So I think it was just leaning into that, because I was so terrified of being at home and what the implications of that could be
Yes.
if I just felt tempted, that I just stayed
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the advice I give to anybody, is just grab it as hard
Yeah.
and fast as you can, and do
Yeah.
everything that's
Yeah.
available, because that's the foundations of your recovery,
It is.
and
I
that's the thing.
Obviously I work in a treatment service and I run a smart meeting and
Mm.
stuff. The guys who you see engaging with whatever is on offer, whether it
Mm.
be a chess group, a music group, a
Yeah, yeah.
cafe, the open mic nights, like they're the guys who you can see
Mm.
continuing to not just stay sober, but evolve, if you
Yeah,
see what I mean. And it's throwing everything at it, isn't it?
mm.
And really committing
Definitely.
to it.
Completely. That's it. And it's such a, I think that's the thing. We kind of come in and we're so full of guilt and shame, and we're like newborns, in terms of the kind of how we feel things for the first time and stuff. And I
Yeah.
think with like, I'm delivering a series of workshops at the moment in North London, and the numbers have been quite low. And I said to the guy the other day, I said, why do you think it's just, that people aren't coming? And he just said, well, I just think it's people just don't think they can.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but that's not what I was told in New Recovery. I'm like, do everything,
Do
embrace every
everything.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, if an opportunity sits in front of you, like, don't say, no, I don't think I can do that. Go and try and find out whether you can do it or not.
Yes.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because for the last 5, 10, 20, 30 years, like, you've been stymied, you've been stuck, you've been behind a
Yeah.
brick wall,
Yeah.
shouting at the world, and the world hasn't been able to hear you. And now you've got a perfect opportunity to go running at the world head first and go, I'm bloody here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
No,
the
I
thing.
totally agree with
Mm.
that. Totally agree with that. When you talk about the concept of you came into recovery with a lot of guilt and shame, how do you
Mm.
manage that, and how did you manage that? Because that's something we hear so often, and a lot of people stay in the cycle because of guilt and shame and stuff. How did you and how do you manage that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the 12 steps, and I try not to talk a lot about my own journey with 12-step fellowship. I will, because you've asked me, but
Yeah.
obviously, for every
Yeah, please
individual, it's
do.
different, and I know for a lot of people, 12-step is not the solution for them, and that's fine, each to their
Yeah.
own, But for me, it was like I I needed a program that was going to help me
Yeah.
look at my past life, and help me look at the indiscretions and the things that I'd done to other people, and the things that other people had done to me. And so
Yes.
within the 12 steps, obviously you do that, you do a personal inventory. So you look at your entire life, you
Mm,
list all the people that have harmed you and that you've harmed.
yeah.
You look at your behaviors around other people, and it's essentially it's a bit of it's a lot of CBT mixed with a
Yeah.
spiritual program, and so smart is obviously the CBT elements of that as well. I'll probably get lynched for saying that, but but cleaning house, looking at past life, writing your life story
Yeah.
out, and kind of all that stuff. And I know a lot of treatment centers do that as well, the life story thing. And it's kind of, we always believe we're a lot worse than we are, and I think that's
Yeah.
the thing, because of the way we've lived our lives. But when I came to do my amends process, like, I went and made an amends to my mom, and I made this huge, profound amends about being an alcoholic and drug addict, and how it impacted her over the years. And she was like, Chris, you lived you live 150 miles away. She said, we don't know half of what you've been up to apart from
Yeah.
the old phone call. Like, of course, in my mind, I've been a terrible son and I've done this and I've done
Hmm.
that because I've been living my life, but my mum doesn't see me every day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that thing of you have to partition between what's real and what's imagined, first of
Yeah. And
all,
living in
you
people's
know.
heads and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Completely. But I think if for me it was the 12 steps, and I've worked the
Yeah.
program twice. I've done the 12 steps twice, and it's set me in good stead. I'm quite
Yeah.
capable of looking at my behaviors and going, oh, being a dick.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But but yeah, I think if you're new into recovery, just whatever works for you, whether it's smart
Yeah.
recovery or speaking to a drug counselor or
Yeah.
whatever pathway is best suited to you.
Yeah.
But also the most important person, I think, on any list, and I've said this to sponsees in the past, is go and stand in front of a mirror,
Yes.
and forgive yourself before you forgive anyone else.
Yeah.
Forgive yourself for all the bullshit because it wasn't you, it was your addiction.
Yeah.
Your addiction is part of you. It's the part of you that we're now trying to make as tiny as possible,
And manage.
and manage as much as possible, and it won't go away. That's the thing. It'll always
Yeah.
be there, whether it turns into a shopping addiction or a food
Yeah.
addiction or whatever it looks like, but to try and make it as small as possible
Yeah.
and just forgive yourself for all the shit because you're not
Yeah.
as bad as you think you are.
Yeah. That's really, really important. That bit, I think if you can't get that forgiveness for yourself, like it's talking to others about how they got there and stuff. Because I think if your relationship with yourself is not good, it's
Mm.
really hard to
Yeah,
sustain
completely.
something like recovery, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you think you're a piece of shit, you're
You're
gonna
going to be a
act like
piece
a
of
piece of
shit.
shit.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas
Yeah.
actually, I used to say it, and I still do actually. I say it a lot to people. It's like, recovery gave me the ability to walk down the street with my head up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's and yeah, in 12 steps they talk about loving ourselves,
Yeah.
which I think is a lovely notion. I think the best, and I get it because it's a beautiful idea, but it's like, for most of us, it's like just being okay with ourselves. Like I
Yeah.
can sit with myself and I'm quite happy. I can go for a
Yeah.
walk and I'm not sitting there going, oh my God, oh my God. No,
Yeah.
I can just do life. I can be myself. I can do life, and I'm quite all right with it. Like if
Yeah.
nobody else gets on with me, that's tough shit. That's their problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Well,
totally agree with
I
that.
think I'm all right, mate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on what you said earlier as well about your ADHD and autism diagnosis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's you can't even ignore at the moment the high rates of our guys and people like us in
Mm.
addiction who are getting autism and ADHD diagnosis and the huge role that plays. Talk us through that process for you.
Wow. So yeah. And this probably, and it does, and I can almost trace it back to that sense of being a kid and being like, don't want that.
Yeah.
Don't want
Yeah.
it, don't want it. And it was, and if you were to put a label on that now, it's subjective defiance disorder.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's basically someone saying to you, don't do that, and going doing the opposite because
Yep.
you won't tell me what to do,
Hmm.
and that's the thing.
Yeah.
So, but obviously I can label that now and go, okay, that's quite funny. I've lived my entire life falling out with bosses, friends, anybody that tried to tell me what to do, was like, I'm just going to burn your life down,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. But yeah, so the I always thought I was neurotypical, and I just thought I was just weird. But I had an old flatmate when I was in recovery, and he turned around to me and he said, "You're the most spiritual person I know." He said, "But you're utterly insane and quite terrifying at times."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What do you mean?" Because I'd get angry at people. Like I'd be in Costa and someone would be in a queue in front of me. Sorry, I don't know if we're going to use brand names, but I'd be in a coffee shop and somebody be in front of me, and it would be like, oh, can I have extra steamed milk on my coffee? And I'd be standing there getting so angry because it'd be like, you're having it steamed. The steam is 100 degrees. You cannot have hotter
Yeah.
steamed
Yeah.
milk. It's
Yeah.
steam. Like, do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I'd get
Yeah.
really irate about it. And I'd come home and I'd rant and I'd rave about this thing. And he'd be
Hmm.
like, what? When my little boy was born, he would, and he's autistic as well, and he would line his little cars up in color order. He's obsessed with blue,
Yeah.
obsessed with blue.
Mm.
He would line his little cars up. I'm looking over right now in the corner of the room. His Lego, he's left it out, and it's all lined up, almost perfectly shaped, like
Yeah.
Tetris. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we started to see this, and his mum said, "Oh, I think he's autistic." And I said, "Okay, well, we'll put him on the waiting list." And then I met my current girl. So me and his mum split up, and I met my current girlfriend, and she's quite ADHD, and she sort of said, I think you should look into getting tested because of the way I. But with like rejection sensitivity and emotional dysregulation and stuff like that. And we started to sort of talk about how I reacted to things. And I was like, so looking at him and talking to her, I was like, maybe a thing here. So I went and did the patient's choice thing, whatever it's called. Is it patient's choice? I can't remember what it's called now. Right to choose.
Right to choose,
So I did right to choose, and luckily it fast tracked me through the whole system. And I wound up at a clinic in London, and got a diagnosis last August for autism, and then I think November for ADHD. So the autism one. So I had this weird thing. So when I went for the initial assessment, obviously my brain went into, what if they caught this when I was a kid? How different my life would have been. Would I have become an addict? Because I've obviously been using drink and drugs to cope with the way I feel, and blah 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 blah. Massive spiral, hole going down. And that lasted for about 24 hours. And I spoke to my sponsor, I spoke to lots of people about it, and they were like, but you're still you. Like, you'd still have been you. Like, you still would have made decisions and done things the way you were going to do them, because it's you. And so, so I kind of then came to peace with that one. And I don't know, I think with the ADHD diagnosis, that was almost like when I went through the autism assessment and she started talking about, the assessor started talking about the different kind of behaviors and stuff, then suddenly I'm like, I can't sit still. Like, I'm literally propelled by a motor. I've got a project on the go for everything that I never, ever, ever finish. Like, I've got a half-built book nook up there. I've got bits of stuff in the, supposed to be boxing some pipes in the kitchen. I've got halfway through, painted the thing, half painted it, and now it's just, that's a done deal. Like, you know, it's like, and it's like, so when the ADHD assessment came along, it was like a bit of a surprise, but not a massive one. You know, I suppose the interesting thing was when they turned around and went, "Would you want medication?" And I went, "I'm a drug addict. I don't think I do." So that was the thing. The idea of, and even when I met my partner, you know, she said, I've got my ADHD medication. Are you okay with that? Knowing that I'm a stimulant addict. And I was like, look, it's fine. Just keep it on your side of the bed, whatever. Like, you know, but when they offered it to me, I was like, no, I don't think so. That's going to be a recipe for disaster. However, you know, you can be a drug addict and take it safely. I know many people that do. You know, my partner's in recovery, and takes her medication and is absolutely fine. You know,
it's a lovely example of how everyone's different, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think, you know, I by all means explore it, by all means, but just, you know, speak to your prescriber, make sure you're safe, and just take as prescribed. You know, and if you feel that you're going to be wonky with it, you know, then speak to your prescriber again, and just kind of maybe don't. You know, it's you know, there are ways of doing it, but just be careful, I think, is the thing. If you've got any
as well,
doubts.
like, you don't even to have the diagnosis, and you don't need to have medication for it if you don't want to. But for a lot of people, it just puts a lot of puzzle pieces together. It creates some self-compassion. Like, a lot of us guys with autism and ADHD, we were labelled as the naughty kids at school. Very, very self-critical, feel like no one really understands us, square peg round hole stuff. And then you just think, some of that actually makes sense now. Like, it just puts it together a bit, doesn't it?
That's the thing. I mean, now I can laugh at myself more. I can laugh at the behavior. So like some of the things I was noticing while I was like waiting for my assessment was, like, I would walk into a shop, so like one of the clothing shops in town, and I walked in one day and the escalator wasn't working going up. Like, so I stood at the bottom of it and I just went and walked back out of the shop, because that sensation of getting on an escalator when it's not moving, I just find it just makes my stomach lurch. So I can't do it. So I was like, I found that quite funny. And then I was traveling back from a work thing in London with a colleague, and their trains down here, they don't have any doors between the carriages. They're like one big long bendy bus kind of vibe. And I stood up and there were two toilets, one that way and one that way. And one to the left and one to the right. Sorry, I'm conscious this is a podcast and I'm pointing. And I stood up and I started counting the handrails and the seats down the carriages to work out which one was closer. My colleague turned around to me and went, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, counting. And she's like, "God, you're having such a Rain Man moment." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And little things like that. And then it
really helps to put the puzzle together, I think, for a lot of people.
The things that frustrated me about myself and the things that I found so annoying about myself, I can now go, oh, but that's part of me, but that's that part of me, and I have an explanation for it, rather than it being, I've just got these really annoying habits. Like, they're not annoying habits, they're parts of my autism or parts of my ADHD
that who you are.
I'm part of who I am. And this is I actually wanted to touch on this as well, because I think it's, and as I said it earlier, really, You know, I think people are so, when you get that diagnosis, it's almost like, where does the addict begin and the autism and ADHD or the neurodivergence begin? And it's kind of like, and we almost try it, and there's this temptation. I've seen a lot of friends do it, of like trying to partition it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like my addict's over here, my neurodiversity is over here. It all lives in your head. It's all in one. It's all inside one brain. So like a friend came walking in my office and she was like, "Oh, I've got this. And how do I know? You know, how do I know where I am on the spectrum?" I was like, why do you need to know where you are on the spectrum? Like, it's a spectrum. It doesn't really matter.
Yes.
Like, you know, it's not a line. It's not a line where you're like on a level of 1 to 12. Like, it's literally, you can be anywhere in the cosmos, and you can be the only person inhabiting that one part of the whole universe. Is actually where your autism and ADHD and your addiction lies. So don't question it. Just embrace all of it as part of who you are. It's what got you to where you are today.
Absolutely.
So just be fantastic, be marvelous, be neurodiverse, be an addict, be brilliant, because you have every, I'm going to swear, fucking right to be fantastic. So go and do it.
I think that's a brilliant way of looking at things. And I think about it with all of it, like we're all different, and we're all, and that's a really, really good thing, isn't it? That we're all different.
Yeah, completely. I think this is, it's what makes the world fantastic. So
yeah. So kind of, if anyone was at home listening today and kind of resonated with your story and kind of a bit like, okay, what do I do now? I'm using, what advice would you give to someone at home right now contemplating moving into recovery and making some changes? What advice would you give them?
That's a very good question. I think just look what's around you, definitely. I think, and just make some tenuous inroads, really. Like if you're thinking that you may need to go through drug and alcohol services, then obviously reach out to your local services. Just go and talk to somebody. That's what they're there for. Like, they're pretty much all charities, and they're all just led by other people who are either in recovery or just working in that sphere that just want to help people. Trust, like, anybody that's working in services not well paid enough to do that job if they don't love it. And if you think 12-step fellowship might be of interest, then, you know, and you have the remotest of spiritual ways about you, then look into that as well. Obviously most drug and alcohol services have smart groups which aren't spiritually led. So I think, just if you feel like you're in trouble and you feel like you're on your knees and you kind of, you know, you want to get help, reach out. Like, it's there, and that's the thing. And I think the thing that stops us most of the time is like that guilt and shame, or feeling embarrassed, or like, oh, you know, my life's like, you're not alone. There's millions of people in this world, like, who have been exactly where you are. Like, I think at the last estimate, it's like 1% of the national population are in recovery, which is somewhere in the region of about 1 million people now. So there's 1 million people in the UK who are in recovery. So, you know, that's a fairly hefty amount of people. So you're not alone. You're not the first person to tread that path. And I think just as soon as you start walking that path, more feet will join you, more hands will grasp your hands and carry you until you can carry yourself. So I think just get on with it. Don't stop pissing about, basically.
I love that. And it is, you're not alone in it. There are so many people in recovery who have got some advice, or it's that follow the winners thing, isn't it? It's
really,
there's a pathway laid when you want it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it. And then just embrace it with both hands. And when you do, you know, opportunities will present themselves, and you just got to grab it. You just got to go for it. You know, you have the opportunity not just to save your life or change your life, but to grab a whole brand new one straight off the shelf. You know, you just got to go. It's exciting. It's magic. You know, every great thing that's happened to me in recovery. I started Not Saints in recovery, you know, the world's only recovery-based record label. You know, I travel all over the country, meeting recovery communities. I have my son in recovery. I've learned to drive in recovery. Like, I've traveled the world. I'm off to Vietnam next week. Like, I'm so excited. Like, I never, ever, if you said to, you know, 27-year-old me, like, you'll have enough money to go to Vietnam and spend like 2 weeks out there traveling about, I'd have told you to jog on. But like, here I am, you know, doing it. Because I've just gone, let's just see, you know.
Jumped ahead of me a little bit there. I was going to say as well, do you want to tell us a little bit about Not Saints? Because what you guys do is incredible. So we'll finish up on kind of you telling us a little bit about that.
No worries. So So I started Not Saints in 2018. Basically, I worked in the music industry a long time. I've been in bands and stuff. And as I got sober, I started to see more and more musicians who were kind of like coming into recovery or had been in recovery a while, who just weren't getting any opportunities to kind of record or play
Mm,
anywhere, And so the local recovery cafe, they had an open mic night once a month, and it was like that's just where they were playing. They weren't playing
yeah.
anywhere else. So I was like, okay. So I was working as a booking agent at the time, and I had a contract come to an end, and I just thought to myself, what if we started a record label just for people in recovery to tell their story and to kind of like, have that experience
Yeah.
of being a recording artist on a record label, as most musicians will aspire to,
Yeah.
and so yeah, we set off, and we I thought we'd last about 6 months, and we're still here nearly
Yeah.
8 years later. We've worked with 80 plus musicians now. We've released, I
Wow.
think, like 12 albums, like 16 EPs and dozens of
Yeah.
singles. We've got more music coming out this year than I think we've ever released. And we very quickly off the back of that started doing our own events. So we started
Yeah.
doing like local cafe spaces, and then we found a very sympathetic venue that would run a dry bar in the venue for us while the pub
Yeah.
next door. So we kind of did all that, and then how we met you guys was obviously post pandemic. We got some lottery funding and came down
Yeah.
to Exeter, and we kind of helped set up the open mic nights in Exeter, and then
Mm,
um, and we just kind of went from strength to strength, and then we started consulting on lots of recovery festivals. So we worked with
yeah.
Bristol Recovery Festival and Essex Recovery Festival and stuff, and I really got involved in that side of things. So working more rather than doing our own events, we worked with
Yeah.
communities around the UK to do it. So we set up Saints and Sinners in Manchester and Bristol Sober Spaces and Suffolk Sober Spaces, and so they're all kind of your sister open mic nights around the
Yeah.
country, if you like.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the event stuff became a big part of what we do. And then in 2023, 2024, we had some major funding fall through. We were looking at like 3-year funding with a major charitable trust, and it was all looking fantastic. And then we got a phone call the day we were supposed to find out, and we were all like, this is great. It's going to last us 3 years. We've got this magic amounts of money and stuff. And they were just went, trustees have decided to change what they're looking for. And so we'd spent 6 months creating this proposal, creating all the stuff, and
Yeah.
they just pulled the rug from under us. So that was that. And I honestly thought we were done. I thought that was the end
Yeah.
of us. I think we had 700 quid left in the bank because we'd put all our eggs in one basket. Stupid.
Yeah.
And then we did a GoFundMe, and then allowed us to keep the lights on. But I went back and signed on, and it was kind of awful. And
Yeah.
then and off the back of that, I sat down and was like, right, well, what are we going to do? And I spoke to one of my colleagues who's a very well-renowned musician, has played all over the world. And we basically designed a whole new raft of like songwriting workshops and event management
Yeah.
training and stuff. And so we've been doing that now for about a year. So we now travel around. So we delivered in a prison up north 2 weeks ago as our
Yeah.
first job in a prison. So we just spent 4 days teaching the prisoners how to write songs.
Yeah.
And I taught a
Amazing.
guy taught a guy to basically play guitar in about 2 days,
Yeah.
which was hard. And yeah, it's been fantastic. And then yeah, like we literally, I was in London last week doing events training, and that. So we've got a lot of strings to our bow, but we're always, so the record label is definitely still the core of our kind of where
Yeah.
our love is, and the event stuff means that and the training means we can travel about and connect,
Yeah.
not just reach communities and be in recovery communities, but actually connect recovery communities as well.
Yeah.
Like I said, is kind of knowing that Bristol Sober Spaces, Suffolk Sober Spaces, your open mic nights are all
Yeah.
kind of part of the same project, part of the same
Yeah.
network. And
Absolutely.
I had a conversation with a guy in London the other day who was looking for a creative recovery practitioner kind of job role, and there's somebody in Bristol who's doing exactly that at the moment. So I
Yeah.
connected them up. So it's kind of
Yeah.
so that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, I think if anybody's interested in anything we do, you can follow us on social media. It's at Not Saints UK on Instagram, Facebook, and all the other stuff. Or just drop me an email, it's chris@notsaints.co.uk, or you can visit our website,
Yeah.
notsaints.co.uk, and you can reach out and say hello. One of us will get back to you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how soon. If I manage to stop time, we'll be all right. Uh,
Yeah, we I'll put all your links and stuff when we
cool,
when we
thank you. Yeah.
upload this and stuff and on the Instagram page and stuff. But I think what you guys do is amazing. You've been so helpful to us down here. Um, and we have so many people who, when they enter recovery, pick up the guitar again, start writing lyrics again. I think it's such a brilliant form of creativity for people in recovery. So I think what you guys do is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's that thing, isn't it? It's like, you know, treatment centers, 12 steps, like all that stuff. Like, it's great. Treatment center is great for getting you sober. Whatever your program of recovery is what will keep you sober. But, you know, we very much believe that kind of creativity, and I'm going to include sport and things like that as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
because,
yeah,
you know, but it's what you do outside of your recovery that nourishes your soul. And I think that's the thing. For so many of us, for so long, our souls have been dead, you
yeah.
know, and to put music or art or theatre or sport or cookery or whatever it
Whatever
is,
it is.
inject
Yeah,
something into
yeah,
that space in your heart.
yeah.
Not literally, please don't do
Yes.
that, but put something in your, you know, put something into your soul that
Yeah,
makes you feel like you're alive. And I think that's the
yeah,
thing. And for a lot of people, that's music or cooking or you know, yeah, just
yeah,
it's the opposite of addiction. Creation is the opposite of destruction, and I think that's
yeah,
the thing.
yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Chris. It's been an
Thank you.
absolute pleasure. Make
Been
sure
a
everyone
joy.
who's listening to this go and checks out Not Saints. And yeah, the guys are really great at getting back to you as well if you were interested in anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today,
that's it.
mate. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Cool. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, see you later, everyone.
Lovely jubbly. Thank you.